You're listening to the Slavic Literature Pod, your shelf help guide to all things Slavic.
I'm Matt Gerasimovich, PhD candidate at Northwestern University studying Russian literature and film.
And I'm Cameron Lalana, literature enthusiast, guy working in media, and professional editor who makes Matt look bad in the podcast whenever I have a chance, so he has to edit his stuff defensively.
Yeah, I forgot what my title was that I always say when we do the podcast, because it's been a little while since we recorded, and I didn't trust Cameron, so I deleted it and restarted.
Well, that's not what they're here for, Matt. What are the people here for?
I think you're here because you haven't been attending class, and your grade is on the borderline, and now you're here to ask me for help during my office hours. A tale I know all too well.
That's why I always, when I was in college, I butted them up by going every single other office hours just to shoot the shit until I actually needed help.
Quite frankly, that's much more enjoyable than half your class showing up right before a test and saying, wait a minute, I understand nothing.
Yeah. That sounds like a you problem at this point.
Yeah,
that was a me problem up until, about 20 minutes ago, but now that you're all here.
Well, anyways.
Anyhow,
this is an episode not on a book. This is an episode on a little thing we like to call life.
Life, and perhaps some fate.
Some fate. Some fate might be in order.
Why might it be in order? What's happening? What's going on here? Why are we making allusions to my favorite author, Vasily Grossman?
Well, yeah, we wanted to start off our office hours by, announcing on the podcast what has been common knowledge on social media and our Discord for a while, but in 2024, we are going to be leading a chapter-a-day read-along of Vasily Grossman's life and fate. We got a lot planned for it already. If you haven't heard this is news to you, well, you should be following us on social media so you don't miss out on this. Specifically Instagrams, where we're going to be doing a lot of our discussion, read-along, whatnot stuff. But plan for our life and fate read-along starting January 1st, 2024. One chapter per day. That's it. It's really quite simple. We're going to be discussing it with everybody on Instagram and in our Discord. And every morning, if you would so like, we will send you a little a thought-provoking discussion on the chapter of the day. Things that we thought were interesting. We're going to be trying our best to keep a running character list so you don't get lost along the way. And it's going to be good.
It's going to be great. I'm just really looking forward to it. Really ready to get back into Grossman in general, ready to get back to life and fate. And this is a perfect book for a book a day kind of read. It's about 5 to 15 pages every chapter, so very low impact commitment to do every day.
Yeah, and well, what's important about that too is if you miss a few days, you can catch up without being overburdened. Even if you miss a whole week, you can still very feasibly catch up because there are a few days in there where the chapter is just half a page. Mm-hmm. You get those once every 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, so it's like a little gift to you for reading along with us, a half page chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Our little gift to you.
Our little gift to you, which we told Grossman to do.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm super excited to get into it. If you were there for our Stalingrad series, our deep love for this author and for his work, and very exciting to get into Life and Fate specifically. Perhaps a lot of its themes are still relevant, and also just to see the evolution in Life and Fate from Stalingrad, which is really it's fairly drastic change you could see the through line, but for so few years on the whole between the two books in this dialogy.
Yeah, I would say it's the more popular of the two, mostly because we do have a definitive copy of it. Or Stalingrad, it's a little more complicated than that.
Right.
But this has been in translation for longer. People have had more time to kind of sit with it. And in case you're wondering, we're, of course, highly recommending Robert Chandler's translation of this. This is the New York Review of Books translation. We just like Robert Chandler's translations when they're available.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he was on the podcast, which was so nice of him.
Yeah, and if you just happen to look down in our show notes, you might be able to find that episode there. Just maybe.
Mm-hmm. Just maybe.
Just maybe.
So if everything goes according to plan on our end, the challenge for us was at the end of each day, we really wanted to put together a very short podcast episode that talks about everything that our community had discussed that day. a lot of the chapter a day read-alongs, it's just kind of an Instagram discussion, and we kind of wanted to bring it to our podcast platform as well. That way, maybe if you're not participating every day on social media, you still have kind of an idea of what other people are talking about, and that way, just for kind of general posterity, it always stays and somewhere maybe a little more permanent than just Instagram.
So if you make a point you really want to remember, just try to make a note of what chapter it is and see if we include it in that day's episode. You have to listen to them all, but
Yeah, no, you do have to listen to them all.
Yeah, I'm super excited for us to get to that. We're already preparing long in advance, but it will be great. It'll be a great read along, great chance to really dig into the themes.
So I feel like I should preface a little too, in case there are people that are listening that are like, what is Life and Fate? Who is Grossman? I didn't listen to your Stalingrad series. Do I need to listen to your Stalingrad series? First of all, no, it's a completely standalone novel. You do not need to have read Stalingrad. If you did read it, that's wonderful. You might, you'll recognize some of the characters. In my opinion, they act very differently in Life and Fate than they did in Stalingrad, and having read, the first of the two is not necessary. Might be interesting for you, but I don't want anyone to feel like they're beholden to reading 800 or 900 pages before they get into reading this 800 or 900 pages. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Like we mentioned, the themes shift pretty drastically here. A lot of things happen to Grossman between Stalingrad and Life and Fate, and so, as Matt said, the characters start to take on sort of a new life in relation to some evolving things he learned about and started to feel in these years. So it is a sequel technically with the same characters, but it is pretty distinctly its own novel, and perhaps as we get into it, you may understand why it is sort of the more popular of the two, at least in the West for sure.
I feel like at some point we're gonna have to put together just a general standalone who was Vasily Grossman.
Yeah.
For because I feel like it's kind of spread over so many different episodes that we've done it, that because we've covered so much of him, we should just do one episode where it's just, here's why he was important. Here's how he was received. Here are the different things that he wrote. This is why it's, incredibly important. Because I have a few people just in my own life who are like, this looks interesting. I might read along with you. And then I start to tell them a little bit about Grossman. They're like, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know, for instance, that his, documentary evidence was critical in the Nuremberg trials, for instance. Most people don't know that. It's pretty important
right
to know, but most people don't know that.
They don't know that he was the first one, I think, probably to, at least as a journalist, from the side of like the troops, either side, the Allies or the Western troops or the Red Army, to write about the death camps. I know for sure that his article, "The Hell of Treblinka," was used, at at Nuremberg as well, right? So he's this pivotal figure. Also, God, there's just so many other things about his life. I think we should, and I'm completely on board with this.
I also think that for people who really kind of identify with some of or not just identify, but they find the philosophy of the sort of 19th century golden age really interesting, I think that Grossman carries that same sort of, I don't know what you'd say, excuse me. He carries that same sort of like way of thinking, that sort of like way of writing, that kind of exploration of dense, difficult topics forward in a way that addresses things that are in some ways more pertinent today. The Golden Age, of course, is always relevant, but I feel like these are kind of questions that are in a lot of ways unaddressed in some of these. Just sort of, for instance, right, he's in direct conversation with Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem on the banality of evil. There's a core chunk of this book that's about that, in responding to that, which is very interesting. We'll talk about it when we get there, but I'm excited to talk about that. But 19th century, right, addressing like overall themes, good, evil, things like this that of course never go away, but you don't have things like I don't know, you don't conceptualize authoritarian states kind of, right, in the same way at that point.
Right. Yeah. Clearly you can see that we're ripper and ready to go. We're ready to start it right here, right now.
Yeah, that's what we're going to start it right here, right now.
Surprise. All right, let's get into it. Chapter 1. So we start in the camps.
Yeah, actually, the intro to chapter 1 it's very interesting. We'll talk about it when we get there. I don't want to give too much away, but it is actually really provocative the way that Grossman chooses to start the novel.
Right. Oh, you're making it so hard for me not to get into it. But let's move on. Let's move on before I actually start going off about it.
Okay. Well, January 1st, 2024. Make sure you join us. We have on our website. You can sign up for our email list. Yeah, just make sure you check the Life and Fate 2024 read along. That way, I know you want to be sent emails every day. And, it's good. Join our Discord, follow us on Instagram, and read. Do it.
That's good advice.
Mm-hmm. Just generally, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of good advice we have for things, Matt, I think it's time for us to enter the hobby hole.
Let me jump on in.
Please enter the hole. What have you been doing for fun? What have you been doing more casually?
Oh, I wouldn't say it's fun, but I would say it's obsessive, perhaps.
Sure. For some people, they're one and the same.
Yeah, for me they are, but in general, I wouldn't think most people would describe this as fun. However, so I've been, getting back into board games a little bit more recently, and one of the ones I've been running a lot is Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I really like it, but the setup is such a pain for it. And so I was like, you know what I need to do one night randomly is I need to make foam inserts for this board game. And someone who also had this thought fortunately posted plans online, although his looked more like 3D printed, which would have made everything a lot easier as I was kind of like measuring out millimeters on this ruler with my giant pieces of foam that I bought impulsively from Hobby Lobby. I was the only person under like 800 in that Hobby Lobby. I went at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I assume everyone who is able to operate a computer just orders it from home.
Okay. I thought that too, but I looked online. Hobby Lobby was like way cheaper. Like 1/2, 1/3 the price for these foam boards. So this is not a Hobby Lobby endorsement, but it's a very strange store. I have not been to a Hobby Lobby since I was a small child.
Right. Yeah.
I normally, I feel like there's always like a Michael's closer.
Sure.
So, you go in, they got their holiday decorations, which I was going in. This was probably like mid-October when I was there. So naturally the Christmas decorations were out.
Well, naturally. I mean, it's almost overdue.
It's almost overdue, exactly. And so I'm going through all the aisles. And actually, I did lie. I fibbed a bit for my joke there. The two sets of people in there are old people who are doing arts and crafts. Great.
Yeah.
And there are actually people like people my age doing dumb hobbies like this. And there's no in between.
That makes sense.
And it's great. Okay, so anyways, I'm going through all the aisles. It took me about 3 walks up and down the whole store of the aisles to figure out that they actually had labels on the front of them. They're just hidden beneath the layers of hobbies.
Right.
But they are there nonetheless. I was able to find everything, but then as you're going out and you're standing in line, you're like, wait a minute, am I in a Bible section right now? You can get illustrated Bibles. You can get Bibles that I think you color.
Oh.
You can get normal ones.
Okay.
There were a lot.
So, what translations were dominant?
I didn't get that far. I didn't want to pick any up because I didn't want anyone around me to ask me questions. I didn't want to do anything that would signal. But I live in the Midwest, so the people like to they like their small talk. I was not in the mood. I was buying an X-Acto knife, foam board inserts,
sure,
multiple different kinds of glue. Self-healing cutting board. I looked like a maniac in here. So anyways, that was my Hobby Lobby experience.
That's good. Good Hobby Lobby experience. That feels right, just instinctively. I can't remember the last time I've been in a Hobby Lobby. I think I've always been more of a Michaels person, but it feels just right, especially the Bibles at the checkout line.
Okay, honestly, that was a bizarre experience. However, I actually really did like the store quite a lot. It felt good seeing everything organized like that.
Sure.
I'm not sure what that is.
In my brain,
but seeing everything like organized and seeing all the different crafts you can do, I quite liked.
Sure. Maybe you should be more of a craft person. Maybe this can be our spin-off podcast.
No, dude, I'm looking for sponsorship money right now.
Matt Kraftovich. That's the name. That's what I just came up with. You can have that one for free.
Each episode we will go through a different Hobby Lobby Bible. Will we do the color in one, or will we do the one with that sort of seemed like it had kind of like an adventure type theme?
Oh, I think I may know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I had a feeling you might.
I may have been gifted that one as a child.
All right, I'm just gonna leave that at that. It was an experience. It was great. I now have a really wonderful foam insert for this game.
Man, I feel like you could drop acid, go to a Hobby Lobby, and get enough experiences to write like a whole Midwest emo album, conceptual album about it.
I think that's how they were made.
All right, yeah, you got me there.
All they're missing is a bar, and it would be great.
God, that would bring it all together. It would bring it all together.
It would. So do you have me beat?
No, this month I have no hobbies. I've just been
depressing.
I know everyone's taking vacation because I guess it's the holidays, and that means that I get to work extra, which is my little gift for the holidays.
That was a nice gift of your employer to you.
I know, it was really, really sweet of them to get me a 7-day work week this week.
Yeah.
So it's really, really nice to get a 7-day work week followed by a non-sequential days off.
Yeah, and on the first day of Christmas, your employer gave to you 30 days straight of work.
Right. Don't wish that into my life. I've done 11 days straight already. I'm not going to challenge them on how far we can go at this. I know one of the weather guys was on for like 15 days that time.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the weather.
Yeah, that's true. It's the weather.
It's the weather.
Yeah, that's my hobby hole. I've got perilously little that's interesting and fortunate. My hobby this month is commuting.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Tell the viewers how long your commute is. I want to hear some of them die.
On a good day, it is each way. It's an hour and a half.
Let's go.
But right now there is construction on every conceivable part of the Bay Area and parts of the Central Valley, and so you have to go through 3 or 4 construction zones, and people keep crashing their cars. So realistically, it's more like 2 hours, possibly up to 3 on a bad day each way.
Do you think your work would pay for you to helicopter in?
No, NBC doesn't pay that kind of money.
Okay.
At least not at my level. I don't know. Maybe if I get promoted, that's when
we could build a sort of propulsion system to launch you towards your work where you could then parachute in? Are you that close?
Well, it'd have to launch me about 80 miles, but if we could make that happen, I'm not against it. I'm willing to like paraglide into.
All
work.
right, STEM people in the chat. How much money would it cost to build a contraption? I mean, you would only have to go part of the distance because part of it would be parachuting down.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we'll get some people on this.
That's a good starting point. I'm gonna get over to Hobby Lobby actually and start buying some stuff needed to build this cannon.
No, that seems more like a Home Depot project.
Oh,
honestly.
yeah. Well, I live across the street from a Lowe's, so maybe we'll... Hi, Mr. Lowe's people. Can you sell me maybe black powder and like a big metal tube at the shape of a cannon?
Okay, so I know like my conception is that Lowe's is like slightly more left-leaning Home Depot. It's for the left-leaning dads.
Okay, all right.
But I do think that for that fact, you in this project, you will want to go to Home Depot.
Right.
You're going to need something that's like a little bit dangerous, something that Lowe's will have probably like safely locked up. Home Depot will have just on the floor for children to play with.
Yeah, well, I'll just go look for whatever employees open carrying and I
mean,
ask them
I don't
for
think they
advice.
necessarily need to be like locked away, but the fact that like when I go to Home Depot, they have like things that could ostensibly be used as weapons,
right?
Just out, just not even like on a shelf, just like on the floor.
I think it's an invitation. I think it's someone who wanted to fight that. They said, "All right, I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to let God decide."
Yeah, I mean they did, and he does. I have mixed feelings on my Home Depot, my neighborhood Home Depot.
What? How so?
I'm a thinking man, Cameron. Sue me.
Okay, so you're thinking, man. So you want to be at your Lowe's or perhaps your Ace Hardware. Where does the Ace Hardware fall in this schema of things?
I actually do like Ace Hardware. It's where I go for my paint. I will say. Although the last time I went for paint, the guy said I was going for this like dark green that I painted in my office, and he goes, "Sorry, we're out of dark paint." Like, are you out of paint? You just make it in the machine. But it took him like a half an hour to even realize like that was a problem. So that was fun. I don't want to get into Ace Hardware. It's fine. It's not where you go for the level of danger, you know.
This is fascinating.
It's not where you go to feel something. It's the place with the helpful hardware, folks. But
sure.
No, my Home Depot, like in a lot of stores, I can conceptually understand how they are organized, where I need to go, how it flows. When I go into Home Depot, I have not even the slightest clue where I need to be at any point in time. I wander to and fro.
Right.
When my dad goes into Home Depot, he knows exactly where he's going. I don't know how. Ask your dad. I bet he knows where to go in a Home Depot when you need certain things. They're not in the aisles that are labeled for the things they should be.
Right. Well, that's the thing about Home Depot, and I only know this because I spent so long at Home Depot as a kid. Is you don't read any labels. In fact, most people who go in there can or don't read, and so and much like them, I don't either. So we just navigate by feel and by memory. I think it's sort of meant to emulate the life of a hunter gatherer. I think it was actually an intentional decision.
Yeah. Also, but okay. So in our Home Depot, I don't know if this is a Midwest thing. Something tells me a little bit is we have like a bratwurst stand.
What?
Like in the front on the weekends.
That is a Midwest thing.
You can just get like Polish sausage in the front of our Home Depot.
All right, hell yeah, dude.
I don't think I remember seeing that as a kid. I feel like I would have been.
All right, you've convinced me to come visit you.
It's pretty nice.
Interesting. All right.
Okay, so anyways, I can't navigate a Home Depot, but I have found the food stand.
I love this conversation. I'm finding out. So I feel like even though I've known you for years, hearing you get into the subtle differences between Ace Hardware, Home Depot, and Lowe's, I feel like it's really bringing that to a new level right now.
Yeah, I would think so. It's something our listeners have been clamoring for.
Right, they have. They've been, banging pots and pans to know where do we fall on the Home Depot to Lowe's spectrum. Yeah,
somebody sent me like a Harry Potter howler the other day, just screaming at me about this.
Right. I mean, of course, it's not a single like line spectrum. It also has to do with the form of transportation you take to get there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, on one end you have Ray's truck, Home Depot, and on the other end, at the most extreme, you have taking a bike to Lowe's. That's hilarious. I've never. Okay. First of all, I'm the only one with a Honda Civic in my Home Depot. I can tell you that much. And not surprising. I look like an absolute maniac trying to load stuff in there. Surprisingly good trunk space, I will say. But yeah. I am the only Honda Civic there. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, so we live in an area where people do a lot of trade-related work. So there's a lot of like real people who know what they're doing. Right. At our Home Depot. I am not one of them. Well, they need one for entertainment. It's important for their morale to see someone wandering around lost. Yeah, I'm like their mascot. Anyways, this has gone on far too long. Matt, what are you reading this month? What's the? We don't have as good of a title for this one. We need to come up with one. I called it Readings This Month. What readings have I been assigned this month? So it took me about, I think, 3 months to finally finish Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, because I had kept sort of like picking it up and putting it down, and I was reading it when I was on vacation, and then I came back and was busy, and I forgot I was reading it, and then I finished it. And then I'm still reading, but I'm also close to finishing Knausgaard's The Morning Star, which both of them are great in their own way. Knausgaard appeals more to my sort of sensibilities. Sure. I'll say I find it a little more enjoyable. That's fair. Well, we'll have to hear his full thoughts when we do a breakout episode in The Morning Star in order to entice Knausgaard onto our podcast. I'm gonna. So the thing it does make me reflect on is just how little available there is online that's actually helpful. I could probably find stuff through my library, but I'm like, I'm not going to get that deep into Blood Meridian. I just wanted a little something to read, a couple small things, whatnot. There is like the Yale online courses if you want to watch some professor from 20 years ago lecture on it. It's okay. It's okay. It's just not always what I'm in the mood to listen to after I'm done doing my own lectures for the day. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So it just reaffirms my own mission with this podcast. Right. I'm glad that's the main takeaway of Blood Meridian. That's why our podcast is something good. Right. I think that's what old Quorum would have wanted. I think so. That was what the whole novel was about, right? Just a young American man trying to do good in the world. That's what I took away from Blood Meridian.
with his podcast.
This with a gun in one hand and a podcast in the other.
What did you read this month?
This month I've not done any reading for fun, as you might have gathered from my last section. But I have. We are for the podcast, as you may have already heard part of. We are covering a Volga tale. So, and a Volga tale is like almost 600 pages. So I'm counting that as my reading for the month.
Pretty lengthy.
We had to do. We sprinted through 600 pages through 2 episodes. We've done like 900 pages over the course of like 4 months. So I pat on the back to us, I gotta say, for finishing that. Anyway, you'll hear our full thoughts when you actually listen to those episodes. So I won't litigate those here, but I feel a blog coming on. Maybe it's time for a new one. There's a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, we haven't been great about writing on our blog, but we got some stuff up there.
There's some stuff. I mean, something you can go back and reread old ones if you want. Yeah, there's a lot to say about fairy tale and family and recreation, and
there is. I had a lot to say about it for sure.
I know. I feel like after I was really happy with our episode. I still am happy with it, but then after I give more time, I was like, wait, there's more I want to talk about. I need to let it percolate a little bit.
Because we were going to do it over one episode originally, just to fit with the kind of scheduling that we had for the year, and then we were like, oh, why do we always do this to ourselves? Like, we stack like long reads in 1 month like idiots.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay, we have to split it up. But I was a little worried. I didn't really know anything about the book, so I was like, I hope this is going to be enough for 2 episodes. And it totally was, so that was good.
Yeah. Lots of thoughts. But anyway, you'll listen to our episode on it, and you'll hear them, most of them anyway. And if there are more, maybe you'll see a blog post about it. But Matt, I think maybe now is a good time, perhaps, to take a break. What do you think?
I think that's not bad.
All right. Well,
that's not bad.
Not a bad idea at all. Well, this episode is brought to you, our listeners. You can support independent podcasting by heading to our website, slaviclitpod.com. You get access to the notes we used to make this episode, including all the links to secondary sources mentioned. In this case, that doesn't apply, but you will be getting links to all the secondary podcasts mentioned.
If you subscribe, I'll come haunt your local Home Depot and or Lowe's.
And if you subscribe at a certain level, you can give us a drink to bring on to our office hours episodes. In this case, we did not have one, but also I'm sick, and I think Matt's getting started on his work day, so perhaps that's for the best that we aren't starting off with the drink.
Yeah, normally we do record these ones later, but this morning it was just this is the time it had to be.
No, I think this, all things considered, this is the perfect time for us to break out some brewskis. a little pre-commute brewski for me.
Take one for the road, baby.
Anyhow, what can they do if they don't want to spend their hard-earned blood money from fighting an illegal war in Mexico, Matt?
Leave us a nice review. I like to see them.
Okay.
Wherever you get your podcasts, that would be nice. Also, join our Discord if you want to join the discussion for these kind of episodes. We have a very passionate community on there, to say the least. Absolutely.
And if you have questions, comments, or you'd like to appear on this very podcast, you should drop us a line. You can reach our voicemail at 209-800-3944, or you can also email us a voice recording or text question at slaviclippod@gmail.com. We'll bring your question on here and see what we can do to address it.
We'll see if we can fix it.
Speaking of listener questions, we do have one here from the Discord. We actually had 2 on there, but everyone kind of jumped in the second question and actually addressed it. So if you'd like to see our other question, which is about dealing with kind of books or media or whatever, which has more racy elements, especially like, bloodier, I think the term, I don't know if this is the term they use, torture porn. Like, what do we think of that? And I think
bloodier,
it was bloodier.
Meridianer.
Right. I think that was a good discussion to just jump on there. But the question that originally got that is, what do you guys think about this? I guess the context for this is this listener was reading, let's see, what was it? American Psycho? Well, some Bret Easton Ellis novel, I don't know if it was specified, and talked about there's so many people who can't get through, especially for Bret Easton Ellis, because it would rated this book poorly because it was too gross. And so they're asking, what do you think about people not knowing how to put down a book they aren't set up to read? And I think there's some interesting questions to get into here. Bret Easton Ellis is a specific case if you know anything about Bret Easton Ellis. But I think this is a good question, right? I mean, not only there's one angle here of like what how I don't know how to guess prepare people, maybe how to prepare yourself for bloodier or more disgusting reads from Bret Easton Ellis, from writers like who's the guy who did Chuck Palahniuk, who writes some really just astounding short stories in terms of the gross out content. I think that is a good question for that angle, but also on like a wider range, right? For books that are, sexual themes, and even like stuff that's like less prurient, maybe just needing to know historical knowledge. I think that's a good question of how do you prepare yourself or other people to get into those kinds of works. And I'm going to start with, I think, I feel like, I don't know if this is the unpopular take here, but I think sometimes you or a person maybe you're recommending a book to just aren't ready for those kinds of things. If it's like something that's super, I'll take an example, like Chuck Palahniuk, again, he's got this short story Guts, I think it's called, or something like that, where this kid starts using a pool for sexual pleasure, and one thing leads to another, and he gets all his guts sucked out by the pool cleaner. And hell of a lead-in, right?
One thing leads to another.
Yeah, naturally. You see the through line here. You see how it happened. I think that's a good one where like I read that and I was like, man, that's gross, but I liked reading it. It's like a good piece of writing. But then also, if you're gonna, this let's take this theoretical example of giving this book to someone else, because if there's not two people here, it's
hey, Grandma,
right? Yeah,
part of
it is like knowing your audience on one level of knowing what people are gonna enjoy your read. If you're gonna recommend them something in this particular case, right? I mean, this question isn't just about recommending, but if there's just one person involved and they're not listening to this podcast, we can't help them. So in this case, I think people are going to have limits in their reading for fun, and I think it's okay to work within those limits for them to help them read and enjoy in that arena. That being said, some people have really, really restrictive limits, and that one I recommended a book to someone
I'm sorry,
once.
I just can't get over the idea of recommending a book like this to Grandma. It's just really doing it for
me. Yeah. I recommended a family member once a book, I think it was Catch-22, and it briefly mentions like a married couple having sex, or like woman being like, whoa, why don't you use this whip when we have sex or whatever. Anyway, for that family member, that was too much, that mention of and they'd put it down. So
I would agree.
Huh?
I would agree.
Right. Matt's taking a stand. I don't know. Sometimes it's really restrictive, and maybe you don't recommend books to that person. But on the whole, I think it's good to know not only other people's levels, but also your own levels. So like, what's your capacity for those things? If some people like to read books, just pick them up and get into them. I'm always a fan of looking into them a little bit, seeing if you need to do any prep work. Not only just getting ready for something bloody or disgusting, but also like, oh, do I need to know anything about this novel to get into reading it? And for a lot of novels, you don't. But for some, our own discipline here, Slavic literature, yeah, often you might need to do some prep work, just knowing when it was written, where it was written, what was the context, what city, whatever. Just a few things that might help inform your reading. So I guess the short answer, which maybe is less from my end, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, is just, hey, know if you're going to recommend a book to someone, know what they want and what they don't want. Or if it's for yourself, know what you're getting into. If you can, if that's works with your style. If you just like to be surprised every time, then hey, that's your thing. That's how you like to read books.
I would say there was a moment that I was a part of in college. This was when I was an undergrad. Something I noticed, which was that there was definitely a hesitance to read some of these novels that included some of these really graphic depictions. But I would actually say it's improved since I started teaching, that I've noticed students are more willing to grapple with it. But there was definitely this point, I don't know what this says about my cohort of, people that I went to school with, where it's sort of like, there is something that I don't like that occurs somewhere in this book, therefore I'm not going to read any of it. And, I'd say at least in terms of a course perspective, I don't know what to tell you about that one.
Right.
It's in the syllabus, so
yeah,
that's tough. That's why I do think it is helpful in a lot of our courses when we include, content warnings. Just a little bit of a heads up that, you're about to read something you're probably not going to enjoy. So I don't know. I'm kind of with you. There's a lot of stuff to read. There's no reason to read, something that's just not doing it for you. Although I will say, like, I do have family members who will say to me, and this is more of a film or visual media thing, where like I don't like seeing violence, and so I'm not going to watch something because it has too much violence, and that to me is a little bit tough. I get it. I get it's not pleasant, but sometimes we must push through. I mean, not in all cases, but I have family members with like an extremely low tolerance for violence. And that's always tricky to me, because I'm like, you're just missing a lot.
Yeah, I've noticed something, not for like just violence, but for I don't know if this is just the people in the community I grew up in, but it's less like, oh, it's too violent, but more it's like, why isn't it happier? I mean, it's just such like a sad.
Yeah, it's sort of an extension of that for sure.
Right. And I mean, that one, like I said, I'm not going to move off my old point of, know it's within your limits. But also, I think we talked about this a little before the podcast. There's something to be said for trying to push yourself a little bit, seeing what you can. If there's certain elements that you feel like I want to engage with this more, maybe there's something to be said for kind of stepping out of your comfort zone at a pace you're ready to go at.
Well, this goes with my general theory in art, which is that it is supposed to challenge you. It is at times supposed to make you uncomfortable. It is not supposed to coddle you, comfort you, just always perpetually be there to entertain you, right? In some ways, I think you have a responsibility as a reader to challenge yourself, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it can mean, reading things that are uncomfortable. There are, of course, legitimate cases of, certain topics that might be off limits for you. That's okay. I'm talking like, for instance, we just watched Sopranos not that long ago, and I have family members who are like, I don't care about mob violence. I don't want to watch The Sopranos. And I'm like, okay, well, most of it's about the disintegration of an Italian-American community.
Right.
And this man going to therapy and the fun slang that comes along with this community at this time. It's like such an important show in like TV history to just dismiss it on the grounds of, well, I don't like violence, I'm not going to watch anything mob related. It's like kind of crazy.
I think violence, obviously it's not the only thing to consider here. There's a lot of other angles for things that make people uncomfortable, not just like viscerally, but also maybe existentially, or maybe making them question their relationship to capital or to global systems of production or whatever, the environment, whatever it may be. But I think violence is a really interesting one because there's such a broad range of violence, right? I mean, you can have, in children's cartoons, G.I. Joe, I don't know what the modern equivalent of that is, but there are certain forms of violence which are kind of acceptable or even clean. Kids can watch this. Not Action Rangers, Power Rangers, there it is. But then there's also, you ramp it up to the point where at some point it does become uncomfortable for people, right? Like in The Sopranos for your relatives. But then there's the question of, for me, when is this exploitative? When is this violence unnecessary? Am I in a position to judge that piece of art on its necessity or not necessity? Hard to say. But then I think there's also the interesting angle where authors may, or other creators may, use this sort of violence as a tool to make the audience reflect in one way or another. I think that can be the case too.
I also really liked with I always found this like interesting too, like with Blood Meridian, for instance. I don't really know like if this would fall into the category that our listeners were talking about, but I always find it's just so interesting for even myself reading, like how desensitized you get to the things in it. And it's interesting to notice, like when you're in that mindset reading something like that, what pulls you out of it to make you again realize that, oh, this is terrible.
Right.
Because actually the part of Blood Meridian for me that gets boring, right, is the part where they fall into the rhythm of just relentlessly murdering everybody. Yeah. That's the boring part of the book, and that is fascinating to me.
Yeah. That's great example.
But I don't know.
I think that's a good enough answer for now. But speaking of answers we have for people, Matt, I think it's time for you maybe to go mano a mano, hand to hand with Reddit, perhaps.
Thread to thread. So I wasn't going to do this section because I hadn't seen anything that really just sent me flying out my window. And I realized that's because I unsubscribed from the Dostoevsky subreddit. The quality of threads there are so much worse than other book or Russian-related topics. So much so, I can't even fathom what is going on there. First of all, I think I complained about this last time. At least one half of the posts are people saying, where do I start? Literally don't care at this point, read anything. They'll just take a picture of like any Dostoevsky book they see everywhere, and they'll put some vague title like, thoughts? Or what do you think? Just anything. And these aren't like rare copies, keep in mind. They'll find like a Penguin, copy and
right.
be like, thoughts? What about this translation? Like, oh my God, it's just relentless.
Right.
Then there are the same kind of ones where people will ask a legitimate question who probably maybe my sort of read on it is some of these people might be a little bit younger, just starting to get into some more like serious literature, and they are given no help by anyone in the audience. So this person said, "Hi, why is there a lot of hype about Crime and Punishment? I tried to read it multiple times, but it's too long and I always quit after a couple of chapters." So you get some well-meaning advice like, maybe try a different translation, something like that. And then you just get people who give completely unhelpful advice like, should have started with Karamazov. No, they shouldn't have. If they don't find Crime and Punishment interesting, they're not going to find Brothers Karamazov interesting.
Right.
It's just, it's terrible over there. But my favorite this week was, I'd like to think this was, I don't know what I'd say. I'd like to think this is just a good faith hypothetical. How would you catch Raskolnikov? Forensics and technology continues to advance rapidly. And then this person goes on talking about like modern forensic techniques right. and why they would have caught Raskolnikov earlier. And brother, I don't know how to tell you, like, you're missing the whole point of the book. It's not about catching. You already know who did it. You actually, as the reader, already caught him first.
Do you think this is a bot? Because I'm reading in the late 1800s there were limited surveillance cameras. Well,
yeah, it might be. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I'm like reading this. I'm like, is this? I took it seriously until I got to like there were limited surveillance cameras in the late 1800s, which
It might just be like a shit post. I don't know. I honestly, that's the problem with subreddit is I cannot tell.
Yeah, I think it's even if it is a shit post, I think I like the people who are engaging with it. Yeah. And it lands on how might modern surveillance technology impact the investigation. And someone's like, well, I think if you had CCTV, it'd be pretty easy to catch him. Yes, I guess Crime and Punishment would be a little bit shorter if there was a CCTV camera pointed right at the exit of this apartment building.
I'm gonna write that fanfic and publish it. He doesn't repent, but it's one big. It just turns into sort of like a trial procedural type thing.
Right. It just becomes Kafka's The Trial. Except you do know what you did this time because you just killed an old woman with an axe. Yeah.
So I don't want to take off Reddit completely because sometimes there's some helpful stuff on there. Like I like the Tolstoy subreddit, which is somebody saying like, hey, do you think we could put together like an open source wiki that has all of Tolstoy's freely available and published and translated works together in one cohesive place? And then the Dostoevsky subreddit's like, could we catch Raskolnikov with CCTV? It's endlessly fun.
I mean, if you really think about it, they're asking the real questions.
Yeah, the Tolstoyans are cowards. Yeah, they want to use CCTV.
What if War and Peace happened in a massive surveillance state? How would that change the novel?
Honestly, think about it. They would have gotten Napoleon so much sooner.
I feel like we could stay on Reddit for a long time. I'm scrolling through here and I'm seeing a lot to talk about, but I don't want to land on this forever before it crosses the line into bullying, wherever that might be. What are we reading for the month, man? Let's just go through a quick what to expect for the next over the next 2 weeks before we log off proverbially.
Not much. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. We're closing up the old series we got going. We got part 2 of Vogeltale, which is going to be coming out next week. And then the third week of the month, November 17th, we have the last part of the Master and Margarita series. And then we go on winter break, baby.
Now, looking forward to it. Looking forward to every
we'll
part.
Have, I get the feeling we'll have some episodes, something coming out in December, but nothing, no sort of main series stuff.
Well, as you might understand, we have some things to prep for. One or two projects coming after that, which we need some time for.
Life and Fate will be a lot to prep for, and then, during our winter break and our summer break and whatnot, usually that's when we try to stack up our guest episodes and, record in advance, because otherwise we will die during the year.
Yeah. So there's a little behind the scenes knowledge if you made it this far into the episode.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work to put this whole thing together. So, if you like it, if you appreciate it, go check out our website. Drop us a couple bucks. Drop us $1 or $2.
Just drop it right into the tip jar. Mm-hmm. Well, Matt,
the monthly subscription jar. Yeah,
yeah, that works too. Well, I guess we've already given you a preview forward to what's heading next. So I think maybe we can wrap it up here.
Yeah. Thank you again to all of our supporters that are keeping this show afloat by the collective donations that they continue to inject into this podcast. If you want to be one of our injectors, you can check it out over at slaviclitpod.com.
And speaking of those injectors, those are Peter, Eric, Ben, Jeff, Mai, Daniel, Lou, Gary, Janice, and Isaac, Emily, Caitlin, Yitza, Irini, and Pack Rob.
And the music used in this episode, as always, is Staraya Kino by Peremotka. You can find more of their stuff on Bandcamp or Spotify. The links and spelling are in the show notes.
You'll hear from us again soon.
Hey, 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 hey.